The ship was quiet. It floated through the black emptiness of space like a small metal fish in an endless ocean. The name on its side read Defiant Hope, and it belonged to Earth's coalition fleet. For 3 weeks, the crew had seen nothing but stars and darkness. They were stationed at the very edge of known space, where few ships ever traveled. Captain Taiho stood on the bridge with his hands behind his back. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. He had been a soldier for 20 years, and his face showed every battle, every loss, every hard decision. But his crew trusted him completely. He had never left anyone behind. Not once. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations. Lieutenant Yuna sat at the tactical console, her sharp eyes watching the screens. She was young but brilliant, and she never smiled during duty hours. Some called her cold. Taiho called her reliable Dot at the communication station. Specialist Nari suddenly sat up straight. Her fingers moved fast across her console, and her eyes went wide. She was the youngest member of the bridge crew, barely 25, with a gift for languages that had earned her a place on this ship. "Captain," she said. Her voice was strange. "I am receiving something." Taiho turned to look at her. "What is it?" "A signal. Very weak. It is repeating." Nari pressed more buttons and listened through her earpiece. "It is a distress call, sir. But the language, I have never heard it before. It is old. Very old." Yuna looked up from her console. "Where is it coming from?" Nari checked her readings twice before answering. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "The abandoned zone." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what the abandoned zone meant. It was a region of space where the Galactic Assembly had given up. Years ago, a terrible enemy had appeared from the center of the galaxy. They called it the Hollow Swarm, a living nightmare that ate entire worlds. The Assembly, made up of the oldest and most powerful alien civilizations, had decided to sacrifice the outer regions to slow the swarm down. They pulled back their fleets and left billions of beings to die. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were considered young, weak, and unimportant. When humans protested the abandonment, the Assembly told them to be quiet and learn their place. "The signal is definitely from inside the zone," Nari confirmed. "Someone is alive in there. They are asking for help." Yuna shook her head. "Captain, we cannot go there. Assembly law forbids any ship from entering. If we cross that border, we will be in violation of galactic treaties." "I know the law," Taiho said quietly. "Sir, the Hollow Swarm controls that space. Our ship is not a battleship. We have a crew of 112 people. If we go in there, we might not come back." Taiho did not answer right away. He walked to the main viewing window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, someone was calling for help. Someone had been calling for a long time, and no one had answered. He thought about the Assembly and their cold logic. They calculated lives like numbers on a screen. Acceptable losses, they called it. Greater good, they said. But Taiho had looked into the eyes of dying soldiers. He had held the hands of wounded civilians. There was nothing acceptable about abandoning people to death. "How long has this signal been broadcasting?" he asked. Nari checked her data. "Based on the degradation, at least 4 years, sir. Maybe longer. 4 years." Someone had been screaming into the void for 4 years, and no one had come. "Set a course for the signal," Taiho said. Yuna stood up. "Captain, I must formally object. This mission has no authorization. We have no support. If something goes wrong, then something goes wrong." Taiho turned to face his crew. Humanity did not travel to the stars to follow orders from beings who throw away lives like garbage. "We came out here to make a difference. Somewhere in that zone, People are dying. They have been dying for years while the galaxy pretends they do not exist. He paused. I am not asking anyone to agree with me, but I am the captain of this ship, and I say we answer that call. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then Engineer Doyen, who had been listening from the back, spoke up. He was a short man with oil stains on his uniform and a permanent frown on his face. I can get us there and back. Engines are good. Just do not ask me to fight a whole swarm fleet. Dr. Woodgen, the ship's medical officer, nodded from his station near the door. He was a gentleman with kind eyes. If there are survivors, they will need medical help. I am ready. One by one, the crew members nodded or spoke their agreement. Even Yuna, after a long pause, sat back down at her console. I still think this is foolish, she said. But I did not join this crew to watch people die either. Setting course now. The Defiant Hope turned toward the darkness and jumped into hyperspace. When they emerged 3 hours later, they found a graveyard. Hundreds of ships floated in the shadow of a dying moon. Some were large, some were small, but all of them were broken. Hull breaches gaped like wounds. Lights flickered weakly. Debris drifted everywhere, spinning slowly in the cold silence. My God. Dr. Woodgen whispered. "NAR." I worked frantically at her console. I am detecting life signs. Thousands of them. With them, they are concentrated in the larger ships. Her voice cracked. Captain, there are children on those ships. Taiho gripped the railing in front of him. Open a channel. All frequencies. Nari nodded and activated the communications array. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Taiho of the Earth Coalition vessel Defiant Hope. We received your distress signal. We are here to help. Please respond. Static filled the bridge. Seconds passed. Then a voice came through, weak and trembling. It spoke in the old language from the signal, but the ship's computers worked to translate it in real time. This is Elder Kivan of the Irani refugee fleet. I do not understand. No one comes to the abandoned zone. The Assembly declared us dead 4 cycles ago. Who are you? Why are you here? Taiho leaned toward the microphone. We are humans, Elder, and we are here because you called for help. There was silence on the other end. When Kivan spoke again, his voice was breaking. We stopped believing anyone would answer. We thought we were forgotten. You were not forgotten, Taiho said firmly. Not by us. Now tell us what you need, and we will find a way to provide it. On the bridge of the Defiant Hope, the crew prepared for the hardest mission of their lives. They did not know what waited for them in that broken fleet. They did not know if they could save anyone. But they knew one thing for certain. They were not going to leave. The shuttle crossed the distance between the Defiant Hope and the Irani flagship in 10 minutes. Inside, Captain Taiho sat with Dr. Woodgen, Sergeant Suho, and 2 other crew members. Through the small window, they could see the alien ship growing larger. It had once been beautiful, Taiho realized. The curved lines and elegant design spoke of a proud civilization. But now the hull was covered in patches and scars. Whole sections were dark, without power. The ship was dying, just like its people. They docked at an emergency airlock. When the doors opened, Taiho stepped onto the Irani ship and stopped. The corridor was full of people. They were everywhere, sitting against walls, lying on thin blankets, standing in small groups with hollow eyes. The Irani were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They looked fragile, like creatures made of glass. And they looked broken. Children clung to their parents. Old ones sat alone, staring at nothing. The smell of sickness and desperation filled the air. Taiho had seen refugee camps before. He had seen the aftermath of wars and disasters. But this was different. These people had been suffering for years, not days. Their hope had died long ago that an old Orani pushed through the crowd. He walked with a cane, and his body was bent with age. But his eyes were sharp. He stopped in front of Taiho and studied the human captain for a long moment. "I am Kivin," he said. His voice was stronger than his body. "I lead what remains of my people. I still do not understand why you are here." Taiho extended his hand in the human way of greeting. "I am Captain Taiho. We came because you needed help." Kivin looked at the hand but did not take it. No one helps the abandoned. The assembly made their choice. We were deemed acceptable losses. He spoke the words like they were poison. 8,000 of us remain from a civilization of 9 billion. We have been running for 6 years. Our ships are failing. Our food is almost gone. Our medicine ran out 2 years ago. He finally looked up at Taiho. "Why would humans, the youngest species in the galaxy, risk themselves for us?" "Because it is right," Taiho said simply. Kivin stared at him. Then something changed in his ancient eyes. For just a moment, he looked like he might cry, but he controlled himself and straightened his back. "Then come. See what the galaxy's wisdom has created." He led them through the ship. Every corridor told the same story: overcrowding, malnutrition, disease. Dr. Wajan could not stop taking notes. His face grew more horrified with each step. When the swarm came, Kivin explained as they walked. "We begged the assembly for help. We had been loyal members for 10,000 years. We shared our knowledge, our art, our technology. We believed we were part of something greater." His voice turned bitter. "The assembly held a council. They calculated how many ships it would take to save us. They measured the resources required. And then they voted. Our survival was not worth the cost. They entered what had once been a medical bay. Now it was a crowded room full of sick Irani lying on the floor. There were no beds, no equipment, just suffering. Dr. Wujin immediately knelt beside a young Irani who was barely breathing. "Radiation poisoning," he said quietly. "How long has she been like this?" 3 weeks, answered a tired Irani nurse. "We have nothing to give her. We can only wait." Wujin opened his medical kit. "Not anymore. I need space to work." While the doctor began treating patients, Kivin continued his story. "We gathered every ship we could. Cargo vessels, passenger transports, anything that could fly. We ran. The swarm followed. They always follow." He stopped in front of a window that looked out at the broken fleet. "Every few months, they find us again. Every time, we lose more ships, more people, more hope." "The assembly knows you are still alive?" Sergeant Suho asked. His fists were clenched at his sides. "Of course they know. They have sensors throughout the galaxy. They watch us die slowly and do nothing." Kivin turned to face the humans. "You must understand something. The assembly is not evil. They simply do not care. To them, we are numbers, statistics. Our deaths make their calculations easier." A small sound came from nearby. Taiho looked down and saw a child standing behind Kivin's legs. She was tiny, even for an Irani, with wide eyes that seemed too big for her thin face. She could not have been more than 6 or 7 years old in human terms. "This is Rena," Kivin said softly. "She is the daughter of my daughter, who died 2 years ago. She has never known a home. She was born on this ship, during the running." Rena stared up at Taiho. She had probably never seen a human before. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you real?" Taiho knelt down to her level. "Yes, little one. I am real. Grandfather says no one comes to the dark place. He says we are alone." Taiho felt something tighten in his chest. He reached out and gently took her small hand. Her fingers were cold, You are not alone. Not anymore. Rena's eyes filled with tears. She did not cry out loud. Children who grew up in places like this learned not to make noise. But the tears ran down her pale blue cheeks, and she held onto Taiho's hand like she would never let go. Back on the Defiant Hope, the crew worked without rest. Engineer Do-Yoon took teams to the Irani ships to repair life support systems. Dr. Woo-jin set up emergency medical stations. Food and water from the human ship supplies were distributed to those who needed it most, but it was not enough. It could never be enough. Tae-ho stood on his bridge, reading the latest reports. 8,000 survivors. Hundreds critically ill. Ships that could barely hold together. And his one small vessel could not save them all. Then Nari's voice cut through his thoughts. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting something. He turned to look at her screen. She was pale. What is it? Movement. Coming from the galactic core. Her hand shook as she checked the readings again. Captain, it is the swarm. Thousands of signals. They have found the fleet. Yuna pulled up the tactical display. Red dots filled the screen, moving slowly but steadily toward their position. At current speed, they will reach us in 18 hours. Taiho looked at the display. 18 hours. Not enough time to repair the Irani ships. Not enough time to run. Not enough time for anything. How many? He asked. Hard to say exactly. Minimum estimate is 4,000 attack drones. Possibly more. 4,000. Against one human ship and a fleet of broken refugees. Taiho thought about Rena and her cold hands. He thought about Kivan and his bitter words. He thought about the assembly sitting in their comfortable stations, watching from far away. Get me Elder Kivan, he said. We need to talk. The meeting room on the Defiant Hope had never felt so small. Captain Taiho sat at the head of the table with his senior officers around him. Elder Kivan sat across from them, his ancient face showing no emotion. Between them, a holographic display showed the approaching swarm, thousands of red dots moving like a slow tide of death. You must leave, Kivan said. His voice was calm, like a man who had already accepted his fate. Take your ship and go. You have done more for us in one day than the galaxy has done in 6 years. But this is not your fight. You are young. Your species has a future. Do not throw it away for us. Lieutenant Yuna looked at the display. He is right, Captain. Our ship is fast. We could escape before the swarm arrives. We cannot fight 4,000 enemies alone. So we run? Sergeant Suho crossed his arms. We came all this way just to leave them to die? We came to help, Yuna replied. We helped. We gave them food, medicine, hope. But there is a difference between helping and suicide. Dr. Woo-jin shook his head. I just treated 300 patients. I looked into their eyes and told them they would be okay. Am I supposed to take that back now? The room fell into argument. Voices rose and fell as the officers debated. Kivan watched them with something like wonder. He had never seen beings fight so hard over the fate of strangers. Quiet. Taiho's voice was not loud, but it silenced the room instantly. He stood up and walked to the holographic display, studying the enemy positions. For a long moment, he said nothing. Elder Kivan, he finally spoke. Can your ships move at all? Kivan frowned. Some of them. Perhaps 20 vessels have working engines. But they are slow, and they cannot outrun the swarm. What about weapons? We were never a warrior people. A few ships have defensive systems, but nothing that could fight a force like this. Taiho nodded slowly. He turned to Engineer Do-Yoon. How many of those ships could you arm? If you had 18 hours? Do-Yoon rubbed his chin. Arm them with what? We do not carry extra weapons. But we have power converters. Emergency batteries. Mining charges. Taiho pointed at the display. We do not need to destroy the swarm. We just need to hurt them. Make them bleed. Dahyun's eyes widened as he understood. You want to turn civilian ships into gun platforms. Use our spare parts to build makeshift weapons. He thought for a moment. It would be ugly, dangerous, probably blow up half the ships I modify. A slow grin spread across his face. I love it. Give me your 18 hours. I will give you a fighting fleet. Yuna stood up. Captain, even if we own the Irani ships, we do not have crews who can fight. The Irani are refugees, not soldiers. Sergeant Suho spoke up. Then I will train them. 18 hours is enough to teach the basics. Point the weapon. Pull the trigger. Stay alive. The Irani will not fight, Kivin said quietly. We have not been warriors for thousands of years. Our people do not know how. Taiho turned to face him. With respect, Elder, your people have been fighting for 6 years. Fighting to survive. Fighting to keep their children alive. Fighting against despair every single day. He walked to Kivin and stood before him. I have seen warriors from a dozen species, and I have never seen anything braver than your people's refusal to give up. You have been fighting the hardest battle of all. Now I am asking you to fight one more. Kivin was silent for a long time. His old hands trembled. When he spoke, his voice cracked. You truly believe we can win? Taiho did not hesitate. No, I believe we can fight. I believe we can make the swarm pay for every life they have taken. I believe we can show the galaxy that the abandoned are not so easy to kill. He put his hand on Kivin's shoulder. And I believe that as long as we are breathing, we do not stop. Not today. Kivin looked up at the human captain. For 6 years, he had waited for someone to say those words. For 6 years, he had watched his people die while the galaxy turned away. Now a stranger from a young species stood before him, offering something he had almost forgotten existed. Hope. Not today, Kivin repeated. He straightened his bent back and lifted his chin. Then we fight. I will speak to my people. I will tell them the humans have come, and they are unafraid. A strange light appeared in his eyes. I will tell them that today we stop running. The room erupted into action. Do-hyun rushed to gather his engineering teams. Suho began planning combat training. Yuna started working on tactical formations, using the debris field and the moon's gravity to create bottlenecks where the swarm's numbers would matter less. Dr. Woojin approached Taiho privately. Captain, what you said was inspiring, but you and I both know the odds. Even if everything goes perfectly, we are probably going to die here. I know, Taiho said quietly. But think about what it means if we win. Think about every abandoned species watching from the shadows. Think about the assembly and their cold equations. If we show them that the Forgotten can fight back, that one ship can make a difference, everything changes. And if we lose? Taiho smiled sadly. Then we lose standing up instead of running away. Some things are worth dying for, Doctor. The lives on those ships are worth dying for. Rena is worth dying for. He looked out the window at the broken fleet. My whole life, I have followed orders and done what was expected. Just once, I want to do what is right. That night, while the fleet prepared for battle, Specialist Nari sat alone at her communication station. She was composing a message, choosing every word carefully. When she finished, she broadcasted on every frequency her equipment could reach, human, alien, and assembly channels alike. This is Specialist Nari of the Earth Coalition vessel, Defiant Hope. We are currently in the abandoned zone with the Irani refugee fleet. The Hollow Swarm is coming. In 18 hours, 4,000 enemies will attack 8,000 civilians who have committed no crime except surviving. We are one ship. We cannot win this alone. But we are not leaving. If anyone out there still believes in protecting the innocent, if anyone remembers what it means to be civilized, now is the time. We will be here. We will be fighting. And we will not stop until the last of us falls. This is our stand. Join us or watch us die. The choice is yours. She ended the broadcast and sat back. The message would travel through space at the speed of light, reaching thousands of worlds. Probably no one would answer. The assembly had made the rules clear. The abandoned zone was a death sentence. But Nari believed in miracles. She had to. Across the refugee fleet, Arani, who had given up long ago, began to stand. They listened to Elder Kevin speak about the humans who had come to die beside them. They watched human engineers crawl through broken ships, building weapons out of nothing. They saw Sergeant Suho teaching their young people how to fight. And something changed. Mothers held their children close and swore they would see them grow up. Old warriors remembered skills they had not used in decades. Young Arani, who had never known anything but running, looked at each other and saw something new in their eyes. Determination. In 18 hours, the swarm would arrive. In 18 hours, the battle would begin. But tonight, for the first time in 6 years, the Arani refugee fleet was not preparing to run. They were preparing to fight. The hollow swarm arrived with the silence of death. There was no warning, no declaration of war. One moment the stars were empty. The next moment, they were filled with nightmares. Captain Taiho stood on the bridge of the Defiant Hope and watched them come. The swarm ships were not like anything humans built. They looked alive, twisted masses of organic matter and metal fused together. They moved like a swarm of insects, thousands of them spreading across the darkness, blocking out the stars themselves. Contact in 15 minutes, Lieutenant Yuna reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands were tight on her console. They are moving into attack formation. All ships report ready, Nari added. The Arani are in position. Taiho opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Captain Taiho to all vessels. Today, we face an enemy that has destroyed worlds. They believe we are already dead. They believe we are easy prey. He paused, looking at the screens showing the Arani ships around them. Civilian vessels now covered in makeshift weapons. Crews who had never fired a shot waiting at their stations. They are wrong. Today we show them what the abandoned can do. Today we prove that every life matters. Hold your positions. Trust your training. And remember, we fight for everyone who cannot fight for themselves. Good luck to all of you. The channel closed. On the Defiant Hope, the crew was silent. Then Engineer Doyen spoke from his station near the back. Captain, if we survive this, I want a raise. Despite everything, Taiho smiled. If we survive this, I will buy you a whole new ship. Deal. The swarm hit them like a wave. The first attack targeted the outer ships. Swarm drones slamming into the defensive line with mindless hunger. The Arani vessels fired back, their jury-rigged weapons sending bursts of energy into the approaching horde. Some drones exploded. Others kept coming, crashing into hulls and trying to tear through. The Defiant Hope moved through the battle like a dancer, faster and more agile than anything else on the field. Yuna commanded the weapons with cold precision, her tactical mind finding patterns in the chaos. Every shot counted. Every movement had purpose. Enemy cluster at bearing 7, she called out. Arani vessel needs support. I see them. Taiho pushed the ship into a sharp turn, bringing their main guns to bear. Fire. A dozen swarm drones vanished in a flash of light. But more took their place. Always more. On the Arani flagship, Elder Kivin had taken position at a weapons console. His old hands worked the controls while younger Arani ran ammunition and reported damage. He had not held a weapon in 50 years. But some things the body remembered, even when the mind tried to forget. "Grandfather!" Rena's voice came through the internal speakers. She was in the emergency shelter with the other children, but she had found a communicator. "Are you okay?" Kivan fired another burst at an approaching drone and watched it explode. "I am fine, little one. Stay where you are. Stay safe. I am scared." "I know. I am scared too." Another drone fell to his weapons. "But the humans taught me something today. Being scared does not mean you stop fighting. It means you fight harder." The battle raged for hours. Ships fell on both sides. The Orani fleet, despite having no military training, fought with a fury that surprised even the swarm. These were people who had lost everything. They had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Dr. Wujin worked in the medical bay without rest. Wounded Orani and humans arrived constantly, carried in by soldiers who barely had time to set them down before returning to the fight. Burns, cuts, radiation injuries, the doctor treated them all. "I need more bandages," he called out to his assistants. "And someone help me with this one. He's losing too much blood." A young Orani nurse appeared at his side. She had been terrified when the battle started, but watching the human doctor work had given her courage. Together they stopped the bleeding and saved another life. "Thank you," Wujin said to her. She shook her head. "Thank you for coming here, for showing us how to hope again." On the Defiant Hope, things were getting desperate. The ship had taken multiple hits. Fires burned in 3 sections. The shields were failing, but the crew kept fighting. Sergeant Suho led a team of Marines through the corridors, hunting swarm drones that had breached the hull. The creatures were fast and vicious, but Suho was faster. He moved through the ship like death itself, his rifle never stopping. "Clear," he called after taking down the last invader in a storage bay. Moving to Section 4. "Suho, we have another breach near engineering." Taio's voice came through his earpiece. "Daohyun needs protection. He's keeping our weapons online. On my way." The battle continued. The Orani line began to buckle. Too many ships lost. Too many people dead. The swarm sensed victory and pushed harder, their drones concentrating on the weakest points. Taiho watched his tactical display and felt his heart sink. They had fought well, better than anyone could have expected. But it was not enough. The swarm was endless, and his fleet was dying. "Captain," Nari said suddenly. Her voice was strange. "I am detecting new contacts. More swarm?" "No, sir." She looked up at him with wide eyes. "They are coming from outside the abandoned zone. Dozens of ships." "No, hundreds." Taiho turned to the main display. New dots were appearing, emerging from hyperspace in a ragged formation. They were all different sizes and designs, ships from species he recognized and many he did not. "We are receiving transmissions," Nari continued. Her hands were shaking. "Captain, they heard my message." They came. Voices filled the bridge, overlapping in dozens of languages. Ships from the Forgotten Worlds. Vessels from species the Assembly had dismissed as unimportant. Traders, refugees, outcasts, all of them answering the call. "This is the vessel Star Watcher of the Kreen Trading Guild. We heard your message. Tell us where to shoot." Iron Dawn reporting. "We lost our homeworld to the swarm 10 years ago. Today we take something back. This is Captain Mio of the free ship Wandering Light. You said join or watch you die. We choose to join." Taiho could not speak. He stood frozen as more and more ships arrived, filling the empty space around the battlefield. They were not a proper fleet. They had no coordination, no training together. But they came. They came because someone had finally asked. All new vessels. Una broadcast on the open channel. Form up on our coordinates. We are making a push through the swarm center. Follow our lead. The combined fleet surged forward. For the first time in the battle, the swarm hesitated. These were not the easy prey they had expected. These were beings who had been pushed to the edge and decided to push back. The tide of battle turned. The swarm drones, faced with unexpected resistance, began to falter. Their hive mind could not understand what was happening. The abandoned were supposed to die quietly. They were not supposed to fight. They were not supposed to win, but they were winning. On the bridge of the Defiant Hope, Taiho watched as the swarm began to retreat. First a few drones pulling back, then more. Then entire clusters turning and fleeing toward the galactic core. "They are running," Nari whispered. "Captain, they are actually running." For the first time in recorded history, the Hollow Swarm retreated from a battle they had started. They left behind thousands of destroyed drones and the shattered remains of their attack force dot in the silence that followed. No one on the Defiant Hope could speak. They had won. Against all odds, against all logic, they had won. Len Do-hyun's voice came over the intercom, breaking the silence. "So about that new ship you promised me." The bridge erupted in exhausted laughter. They were alive. They were all alive, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the battle, the combined fleet gathered around the dying moon for the last time. Ships from a dozen species floated together in peaceful formation, their weapons silent, their crews exhausted but alive. They had won something impossible, and none of them fully understood what it meant yet. On the bridge of the Defiant Hope, Captain Taiho stood with Elder Kivin and watched the stars. The ship was battered and scarred, but it was still flying. Do-hyun had worked miracles, keeping everything together. "We have received word from Earth," Taiho said quietly. "The coalition government has officially granted sanctuary to the Irani people. There is a habitable moon in our territory, a place called New Dawn. It has clean air, fresh water, and room for your people to build homes." Kivin was silent for a long moment. His ancient hands gripped his cane, and his body trembled slightly. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "A home. My people have not had a home in 6 years. You have one now." Kivin turned to look at Taiho. His eyes were wet with tears he no longer tried to hide. "Why? Humans have nothing to gain from helping us. The Assembly will be angry. Other species will question your judgment. You could have ignored our signal and saved yourselves the trouble." Taiho thought about the question carefully before answering. "When humans first reached the stars, we were afraid. The galaxy was so big, and we were so small. We thought we had to prove ourselves, show the elder races that we deserved to be among them. We tried to follow their rules, accept their wisdom, fit into their system." He paused. "But their system abandons people. Their wisdom counts lives like numbers. That is not who we want to be. Then who do you want to be? People who answer when someone calls for help. People who stand up when others look away. Maybe we cannot save everyone. Maybe we cannot fix everything. But we can choose to try." Taiho turned to face Kivin fully. The Irani did not deserve what happened to them. Neither did any of the other species the Assembly threw away. If standing against them makes us enemies of the galaxy, then so be it. Kivin reached out and took Taiho's hand in both of his own. His grip was weak but warm. "When I was young," he said, "my teachers told me that the universe was cold and cruel. They said survival meant accepting loss. They said hope was a weakness." He squeezed Taiho's hand. "They were wrong. You have proven them wrong." The fleet began its journey toward human space. The Irani ships, repaired enough to make the voyage, formed a protective cluster in the center. Around them flew the vessels of all the species who had answered the call, a ragged but proud escort. Along the way, they passed through regions controlled by the Galactic Assembly. Monitoring stations tracked their movement. Communication channels buzzed with demands for explanation. The assembly wanted to know what had happened in the abandoned zone. They wanted to know why humans had violated their laws. Captain, Taiho ignored all of it. When they finally reached New Dawn, the Irani refugees lined the windows of their ships to look at their new home. It was a small moon, green and blue, orbiting a gas giant in human territory. Mountains rose from its surface. Rivers carved through forests. Clouds drifted across a sky that was almost the same color as Irani's skin. Rena stood with Dr. Wujin near one of the observation decks on the Defiant Hope. She had insisted on watching from the human ship. The ship that had saved her people. Is that it? She asked softly. Is that where we will live? Wujin knelt down beside her. Yes, that is your new home. No more running. No more hiding. You can grow up there. Go to school. Make friends. He smiled gently. You can be a child again. Rena stared at the moon for a long time. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of paper, folded carefully. She handed it to Wujin. What is this? He asked. I made it. For you. For all of you. Wujin unfolded the paper. It was a drawing done in the simple style of a child. It showed a small ship surrounded by stars, with stick figures representing humans and Irani standing together. At the bottom, in careful letters that mixed Irani script with words she had learned from the crew, she had written, Thank you. Family now. Wujin could not speak. He just pulled the little girl into a hug and held her while tears ran down his face in the days that followed. The Irani began their settlement of New Dawn. Human construction teams helped them build shelters and establish basic infrastructure. Food and supplies flowed from Earth's reserves. Medical teams set up permanent clinics to treat the years of accumulated illness and injury. Elder Kivon watched it all with wonder. He had expected to die in the darkness of the abandoned zone. Instead, he stood on solid ground under an open sky, watching his people laugh and cry and begin to live again. Taiho found him one evening, standing alone on a hillside overlooking the new settlement. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Your people are adjusting well, Taiho said. Kivon nodded slowly. It will take time. Many of them have forgotten what it means to feel safe. But they will learn. He turned to look at Taiho. What will you do now, Captain? Surely you cannot spend the rest of your life protecting refugees. No, but there are others out there. Other abandoned peoples. Other calls for help that no one is answering. Taiho looked up at the darkening sky. Humanity is still young. We do not have the power of the elder races. But we have something they have lost. We still believe that every life matters. Maybe that is enough. It is more than enough, Kivon said. It is everything. Far away, in the great halls of the Galactic Assembly, the elder races gathered to discuss humanity's actions. Some called for punishment. Some demanded sanctions. Some wanted to expel humans from the galactic community entirely, but others had a different reaction. Species who had watched from the sidelines began asking questions. Why had the assembly abandoned the Irani? Why had they done nothing while the swarm grew stronger? And if humans could stand against the darkness with one small ship, what might they accomplish with support? The assembly's cold equations were being challenged. Their philosophy of acceptable losses was being questioned. And across the galaxy, beings who had been told to accept their fate were beginning to look toward Earth with new eyes, not as a threat, not as a rival, but as a promise that someone would come, a promise that no one had to face the darkness alone, a promise that when the galaxy said acceptable losses, humanity would say something else. Not today. On New Dawn. The sun rose on a new morning. Children played in fields that had never known war. Old ones sat in the warmth and remembered loved ones lost. And the survivors of the Irani civilization began the long process of building a future dot at the spaceport. The Defiant Hope prepared to depart. Its mission was complete, but others awaited. There were more signals in the void, more calls for help, more abandoned peoples waiting for someone to answer. Rena came to say goodbye to Captain Tayo. She had grown stronger in the weeks since her rescue, her thin frame beginning to fill out with proper food and care. She looked up at him with those large, dark eyes that had seemed too much for one so young. Will you come back? She asked. Tayo knelt down to her level, just as he had done when they first met. Yes, whenever I can. He gently touched her cheek. And if you ever need us, just call. We will always answer. She threw her arms around his neck and held on tight. Then she stepped back and watched as he walked up the ramp into his ship dot. The Defiant Hope lifted off and rose into the sky, growing smaller until it disappeared into the stars. But Rena did not feel sad. She knew something now that she had not known before the humans came. The stars were no longer cold and empty. They were full of people who cared. People who would fight for strangers. People who believed that no one should be left behind. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that Tayo had held when she asked if he was real. Then she looked up at the sky where the ship had vanished. Thank you, she whispered to the stars. Family now, forever, and somewhere in the endless dark. The Defiant Hope sailed on, carrying its crew toward the next call for help. The next battle against despair, the next chance to prove that humanity had not come to the stars to conquer or to follow. They had come to make a difference, and they were only getting started.